Couldn't get in there for a while. What was a little late getting started?
Oh yeah, we were, sorry, Rich, we were doing the new board member training beforehand.
Good.
So
Yeah, no problem. I just wondered if I was using the wrong link or something.
Amy, if you could let me know when we are. Oh, is Amy with us yet? No. So. Second, I'll wait for Amy to join us to see if we have a quorum and when we're ready to go.
We have a quorum.
All right. Sorry, we're a few minutes late, everyone. We're going to get going. Let me just check. Okay, Amy's not with us yet, right?
She's not with us yet. I don't
Yeah,
see.
I'm just going to wait since she's the official.
That'd be great.
Just so everybody knows, the assistant secretary takes the minutes for the executive committee meeting. So that's why I just wanted to wait for Amy. She was just with us a minute ago.
Oh, she just texted. She says she can't get in the meeting. It says you have another meeting going. So
Give me 1 second. I will.
Yeah, I had the same difficulty.
Oh, I bet I got it.
I was able to get on through Zoom, through the app, and signing into Zoom, but otherwise I wasn't able to get in.
If you log out and log back, you might have it. It will work. It should work.
Valerie, are you, sorry.
I texted her. Yeah, I just told her to try one more time.
I just resent the invitation to
okay.
make sure she's using the correct. Okay, so I'm going to get going, and I'm going to put forward a motion on as far as the agenda for tonight, which would be the same that we have been doing for our other executive committee meetings, which is the district manager's report, chair's report, committee reports, new business and old business. Is there anybody want to second that agenda? Is there any discussion on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all right, so moving forward, Bob, do you want to start?
Sure, my report will be pretty brief. First, I just want anyone who has not RSVP'd for the workshop on Thursday, please do so we can get an accurate count that we can send to the trainer. That'd be very helpful. And second and lastly, usually it's about this time when I will either suggest or maybe start badgering you guys about taking a look at the district needs statement and thinking about any of the changes or updates that need to be applied to it. I was talking with another district manager last week. I'm not sure, it might have been Susan Stetzer on CB3. And she told me that they're looking at to redo their district needs statement, or at least to amend it with an eye to COVID-19 and all the changes that has brought on the community board protocols. So I haven't talked to Carter about this, but I was going to just suggest, kind of plant the seed, that either that you look at the district needs statement with that in mind, or that maybe we just create another section in the statement about how we have addressed and adapted to COVID-19 and some of the demands that it's placed upon our board. And that's pretty much my report. I'm sure I want to plant that seed so we can talk about it maybe in the coming weeks. There's plenty of time before we have to do anything with the district needs statement, but it's not too early to think about changes to it. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And let's see, as far as So we just had a new member orientation for our new board members, which we just did in the last hour, basically going through with them sort of how the board operates, voting, the committee meetings, et cetera, how, reaching out to the committee chairs if you're going to be absent, the trainings that particularly the conflict of interest training that the borough president will be offering and taking that and some of the issues. So hopefully we'll have another month where they can visit with the different committee meetings, and then we'll have assignments. I'll discuss with the various committee chairs the assignments of the new board members. Robin, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Bob's district needs statement thing.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Just real quick. I mean, without even having looked at my district needs statement lately, recently, I did last year. I don't see myself changing anything as far as the meat and potatoes of it. It's just my industry cultural, the whole cultural scene is so in flux that I can see doing some sort of preamble perhaps, but I kind of feel like it needs to not change very much. It's very difficult to figure out who's still around, who's not still around, what the expectations are for the board as far as what we're going to do moving forward with regard to arts and culture. So maybe in 2 months from now, I'll feel differently, but right now I kind of don't see changing unless there's a factual inaccuracy as of up until February 2020, where there was, I can fix that, but I kind of feel like it needs to stay frozen until I know what's what, but that's just me. And that's just the arts one. So.
Okay.
I think that's what Bob was pointing out, is to just starting to think about this and how we might want to frame it. If to your point, Robin, if we do want to make changes, I think it's hard for us to really think about this since we're still on pause. In New York, no keys have turned, so to speak, except for essential businesses.
Well, not only are we still on pause, but literally the phase 4, God knows when that's going to happen. And this is phase 4. So there might be businesses, retail and restaurants.
Well, we don't even know the landscape as far as non-essential businesses, which is where I was getting to, as far as we don't even know, what be there, what transportation, et cetera. So I think it's going to, a lot of these things will become clear fairly quickly, once we have a sense, but there's nothing to have any clarity on right yet because we're still on pause. And that sort of leads me into just the working group that I've discussed in the meeting on Monday. I've talked to Valerie quite a bit, and really I think that the goal here is we're identifying outdoor areas that are possibilities for outdoor dining, the different types. I think that there are roughly four different types of the areas that we've sort of identified so far. Spaces that are immediately adjacent to eating and drinking establishments that might be divided by something in immediate proximity, like the sidewalk or something like that. And this would include sidewalk cafes or, those types of spaces. The second time of areas would be other spaces in close proximity, but not necessarily immediately adjacent. And those could be in the roadbed. They could be around the corner on a roadbed or some other space around the corner. The third areas would be spaces that are more than a block away, which would be something sort of, for example, when Dinner on 8th has restaurants that are located a couple blocks away, come and set up a serving area on 8th Street. And then the fourth area would be some sort of a shared outdoor seating that would be among different groups. So the idea here that I think that what we're working on is having a recommendation that there be one agency that's in charge of all outdoor seating on a temporary basis through the end of this year that would be able to focus exclusively on those issues. And what we're going to be talking about the meeting are sort of some of the criteria and the concerns of what the community are and the businesses to try to come up with some common ground where everybody can operate together. And the point of this is that this is very early on. This is going to move quickly whenever it does happen. And what we're trying to do is create a framework within, recognizing there's a vast diversity of businesses, there's a vast options on how this could be done, but creating a larger construct where it can all fit under, and just so it can move quickly under one particular agency and one sort of permitting process. And the idea of that is that if there's a base permitting process, many of the other permits can overlay on top of that. So if once a restaurant is able to say this space is exclusively ours, you can start putting on top of that all the other agency permits. So for example, Department of Health permits, you can put on top of that liquor licensing permits, you can put on top of that any other types of permits that might need to move forward. But there's been a lot of support from people that I've talked to about looking at it that way. And so that's sort of where we see it. There's probably not areas that we won't be recommending are in parks. Obviously, we're a park-starved community, so I don't think that there's much support, and it's probably not worth discussion about having private businesses take over any park areas. And as far as all of the that I'm aware of, any of the I think we only have one plaza that might be remotely a part of any type of outdoor seating, and that's already under the jurisdiction under the Village Alliance. So I don't think that we would be looking at plazas either. Pop spaces are a little too complex at this for putting over any type of temporary permitting. I think we only have 2 pop spaces. The one is next to is it the Dominic Hotel? Is that what it's called now? And then the other space is on just below Astor Place, on the, is that 4th Avenue there, Bob? Is that, whatever that's true. There's a little publicly open private space that's just to the north of the Grace Church High School and south of Astor Place. But I think those are the only 2 pops in our community board. So I don't think it's worth it for us to really discuss those. Those are a little too complicated just because of the land use issues. So those are pretty much the options that I see. I don't know if anybody else has any other areas that they can think of that would be outside of that. Susanna, I see that you have your hand up.
Sorry. I just wanted to bear in mind as we go through this that there are huge fairness issues. There, people who have access to those outdoor space, businesses that have access to those outdoor spaces will have a huge advantage over businesses that don't, and the ones that don't will be pretty upset. So it's just something to bear in mind as we go through and think about this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Susanna. And that's actually been one of the points that I've been raising from the very beginning, is sort of the equity. And that's why having options that are not immediately adjacent to a business are so important, so that businesses can have some creativity if they'd like to create an outdoor seating area. And I think in my mind, and from the business owners that I've talked to, having a few seats or, the sidewalk cafe style thing just isn't enough. And so what we're looking at is some larger areas that somebody would be able to have a whole dining section that they could properly set up, that, if they're investing money in any of the tables and chairs or whatever it is, that it's worth it to do. I think that we're, envisioning the way some of this, practically would work would be the way our normal dining is on a Friday, Saturday, and Sundays generate the majority of revenue for most of the businesses. And it would be an opportunity of creating space where residents in our community could go and sit down and eat outside. And there are a lot of other questions, whether people are ready to eat outside, all those, those are, I think, separate from this to some extent, because what we're trying to do is put together the framework of how it could happen, not whether or not people are ready to do it. The assumption is the city will never allow it unless it's safe, that there are various protocols. And so we're just sort of the mechanics. Chanel?
One minor part of Susanna's point is a restaurant that has a very small entry and expands in the back, so it's a large place with a small frontage on the street. Is this the time to discuss outrages about restaurants and masks?
I was going to have that as a separate section.
Okay.
I was going
I'll
to
wait.
address that separately, just
Thank you.
as a separate topic. Yeah, because I do see it as separate, and I just want to make sure that we do keep that separate. You know, the idea of what this the working group is putting forward is a structure within which there are clear, you know, regulations, rules, you know, behavior expectations, et cetera, so that you know, people who want to follow the rules can, you know, and that there are no surprises for the business owners. Janine.
In light of this conversation, I just want to throw into the mix is a question that we got at our last schools meeting that I have not followed up on, but one of the parents asked when we do get back to school, and schools are phase 4, same as theater, even part-time, will there be a process for school adjacent street closures to allow for increased outdoor time? And I was thinking of reaching out to each of the schools and just asking them to keep that in mind as they make their plans, and not say, you know, not saying that we support it at all, but if that's something they need, I would like to hear from the schools and then add that to this process.
Yeah, don't we already, I think there's already a process for that. In fact, I think we had something that came before us.
There
right?
is, but it's, you know, there's right now in CB2, there are 3 play streets.
Right.
One on a tiny part next to PS3, which is dismal. One for right by on McDougal Street for special needs school, and then one for a religious school, a Catholic school in the West Village. So those already exist, but the question is, do you need more? And possibly those are pretty long processes, and if school's starting in September, that also might need to have a streamlined process if that's what in fact is needed.
I mean, you know, I envision just what we're doing right now is very specific to the eating and drinking. I mean, as far as the schools, you know, do you envision that it would be something outside of an area that would be permitted already? Or do you think that this is just a question of time in the approval?
I don't know. That question was asked by a parent. So I was going to reach out to the schools, but we have 3 large elementary schools and 1 large middle school plus high schools. But the elementary and middle schools, you know, the elementary schools don't leave their campus at all, really, unless they're supervised. And of those 4 schools, only 1 has a play street. So the answer is, if the schools want it, yes, it would be an addition.
I mean, if it's something that you know, we want to make a recommendation that's outside of the normal process, I think that's something we can definitely do. If it's something that's within the normal process and the normal process just needs to be accelerated, I think that's separate. That's definitely something we can talk about with Shirley and figure out, you know, for the school play streets, which I would think that's something the schools are definitely, you know, thinking about. But let's talk about that a little bit more. That's a good point as far as
yeah.
Sure,
I don't know where the requirements are. So
yeah, a lot of this is the time that this all takes, and that's really what this working group really wanted to put forward, an idea of having one agency, even though they may not typically do this, you know, whether that might be DCA or SAPO or whoever. You know, I don't think SAPO has enough staff to do it, but just some agency that can just say, here's the framework, boom, let's move forward and you know, get this going. Bob?
Yeah, I don't know how practical or feasible it might be, but I just wanted to mention that we have 3 DEP-owned water shaft sites that might be usable while we wait for them to be converted into a park-like open space, to put some tables and chairs there. And if there are enough restaurants in the area, it might be a place where people can go and sit at a safe social distance and have a sandwich or a drink.
I think the Hudson Street one is, last I remember noticing, there's mechanical equipment parked on at least part of it. It looked like it was staging for somebody. I wasn't sure who, but that's That's an idea. They're already congregating in front, not to jump ahead to Chenault's issue, but they're already congregating in front of the space next to the Merchants House Museum for one of the bars across the street. But that's a good idea. It's a good one to add in. Okay, thanks, Bob. Shirley?
Yeah, regarding the schools, that's a real design challenge too, because I would imagine that if you did do a play street, you'd also have to assign different spaces for kids to play in. And I just wonder who would do that kind of thing, the design aspect. Would it be an agency? Would they hire a consultant? I wonder.
I think we're getting too into the weeds on it. I mean, I think the first thing is to ask if the schools are interested in it,
Right.
and then go forward. But they're going to have this problem whether they're in the street or in this tiny school playgrounds that we already have. So it's the same problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Janine. And let's talk. Can we talk about that a little bit more this week, Janine? Because that's a good thing to figure out right away what we can do to get that conversation going. Because it really does come down to just Shirley's point, is the design and timing of the approval, because it has to be safe, and whatever the structures need to be put in place, we should know about it beforehand, because there may be elements that could be adapted to have that happen. I don't see any other hands up. I wanted to just sort of jump into, and both Bob and I have gotten complaints as far as some of the various aspects of things that are going on in the community, people congregating, not wearing masks, et cetera. I think that this is still something that's being figured out. This weekend saw the opening of a significant number of eating and drinking establishments that have to date been closed. So I think there is a big sort of change in the cityscape. It's also a holiday weekend. And I think that there's a lot of reluctance as there's not too much clarity on what how the rules should look or how they should be enforced. And I think that that's going to be a challenge in the short term, but that's a big part about why we want to have the working group putting together some ideas so that we can transition into whatever the next phase is of having some more organization of that. For the most part, the complaints that I heard were social distancing and people wearing masks. One was about noise, but that, maybe two were about noise, but for the most part, it's just social distancing and wearing masks. And I know the precincts are all aware of it. They're all inundated with 311 complaints. Elected officials, I think, have been made aware of it. We certainly have been. It's challenging, and I think that people are still figuring it out. I also think that, different people have different comfort levels about what they're willing to be around or to be in. I think one of the very real complaints, and it's come up in a couple of times, are people who live in buildings where this is occurring in front and they can't avoid it by walking on the other side of the street, or they can't avoid it by walking in a different direction. And that's something that's very real if people are feeling very at risk, and you've got small groups of people hanging out all over in front of your building. So that's a big challenge. But it's it's ongoing, and I think it's an enforcement challenge. I mean, we've all seen, sort of right now, particularly the highlights of, I think there's a reluctance for any type of enforcement that there'll be, videotaped and that they'll be covered in a particular way. I think that there's not a whole lot of tools that are available to get somebody to wear a mask. I mean, you can give them a mask, but if somebody chooses not to wear it, I'm not sure what you can do from there, but it's a big challenge. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. I know I've spoken to a number of board members about this. It's a complicated issue. And I'm not sure who's supposed to be providing guidance on this either. As far as what we should and shouldn't be doing. I spoke to a few friends of mine who are doctors, who've been right on the front lines dealing with this, and nothing's changed except the number of cases, and that's in direct result of the actions that New York City has taken and people being careful. So, Chenault, you have your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to have a T-shirt made that says "A mask is not a purse," because people carry them that way. I just wanted to relay about Monday afternoon on 4th Street between 10th Street and Perry, I guess is the end. There are two, one La Sardine and another, which has been ongoing, is Virgin. And in both cases, I have numerous pictures, and it was beyond someone's judgment or don't happen to be afraid or whatever it is. It was just plain flaunting, and as though there never was a rule. And it was these two establishments are set up in a very different way from others, in that they have numerous doors open and tables out with their wares displayed and menus that people handle and get together to look at. And they give the impression of a bar to hang out in. The whole atmosphere is that, rather than to take your whatever you're buying and go somewhere and eat. And I've noticed others, and particularly when they're along this line of service, and because they're inviting, just the way they're set up.
Yeah, and to that point, we've gotten, both of those places that you mentioned, along with a number of others, have received numerous complaints, to the precinct, to 311, to our elected officials, and they're very well aware of them. And I think,
and steps right and left were commandeered as places to sit for unmasked groups.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chenault. Susanna?
I think that that's going to be a problem throughout our neighborhood. I mean, the only way that any of these businesses can have business is to be outside, which means that there are going to be people outside, and there's only so much you can do to get people to move from outside, from in front of the restaurant to somewhere else. There's going to be a certain amount of forbearance that we have to have. I don't know how we balance that, but it's going to be a problem, for every restaurant. Every restaurant is going to be spilling out on the street, something that under normal circumstances we would never tolerate. But this is going to be a very unusual summer, and we may have to, find a balance.
Yeah, I was going to say, I over the weekend, I was in another neighborhood in another borough that is not, the demographics are very different than our community, and this wasn't tolerated, period. And so, by the local police precincts, and I was told as much by restaurant owners. So I think it's something that we need to think about as well, that is, you were pointing out before, Susanna, is the inequity in this across the city. And that's something that really needs to sort of catch up, where our community is not somehow different than any other communities in the city. And, and that's a big part about why trying to get some rules in place that, can be applied consistently to everybody so that people don't have to worry about that. I mean, it's, it's definitely, you're right in that we need a little flexibility, but there's a point where this is going to come swinging back the other way when people start really complaining about it, or if we have some, any public health issues with it.
People will complain. I think that the question will be, can you make a rule that everyone has to have a mask? That's somewhat enforceable, and you can ask a restaurant to cooperate with that. But you're going to have to accept that this means that there's going to be more activity on the street. There just is for the
Well,
summer.
yeah, but I think that the Chenault's point is that people are drinking on the street, and that's illegal too, and that there are laws in place with that.
They're going to be drinking.
And there's also a question of whether or not these businesses are creating a disorderly premise in front of their businesses through their activities. So there's a lot of things to sort out.
It's a balance. People are not going to buy liquor at a restaurant they're not going to buy a margarita at a restaurant, which they're now allowed to do and walk away with. They're not going to go home with it. They're going to go somewhere outside and be with their friends. But anyway, look, we don't have to, to Janine's point, we're a little bit deep in the weeds on this. I think that it's going to be a very challenging summer.
Yeah. Donna?
I just want to echo both what Susanna just said about the balance. There's going to have to be some balance, but also when I was walking around the neighborhood this weekend, to Chenault's point, certain places set up in a certain way that's much more inviting for people to be hanging out outside, whereas other places are set up where somebody may grab a drink and linger for a little bit, but not for 3 hours. When I walked around, there were places like some of the ones Chenault mentioned, you could clearly see the people had been there all afternoon. So I think part of this is how the restaurants present themselves out there, whether they put the bar outside and make it very inviting and then add the music on top and everything else versus a little more not so encouraging for people to stay.
Right. So I've got 2 more comments, then we'll move on. Bob, Ely?
Yeah. Just to echo Susanna, I've also been into other people at my work. They live up on the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, and they have indicated to me that there's a lot going on in the restaurants up there as well.
Yeah.
It's very similar, hanging out in front. And Susanna's right. I mean, they're going to drink there. They're not going to go take it home with them. So it does seem that it's going to happen. I think it's something that we are going to have to get used to and deal with over the summer months until businesses can somehow get back into some more orderly fashion with say permits. But it does seem to ultimately come down to hours and music. If you're playing outdoor music, that's not good. And if you as well, if the operation is open, the open facades, that's going to be more inviting. So that's going to be taken advantage of. And I think to a certain extent it should be. If I was the business owner, I would as well. But it does come down to hours. And so, on the outside, 10 o'clock, the complaints are coming, it seems to me, from the emails that we've gotten are for late night. In other words, 11 and 12 o'clock at night. And that's the uncertainty of it. When people don't know when the drinking's going to end, they're more likely to complain. That's all.
Yeah. Michael?
Yes, I'm not sure how this fits into the equation, but we need to spend some time, and I'm not sure if the working group is the appropriate place for eating in the park. We were in Washington Square Park again this weekend, as we go every weekend, and by 8 o'clock at night, the garbage pails were overflowing with refuse from food. We saw people eating and drinking in the park. They would purchase the food and the beverage outside of the park. We couldn't tell what they were drinking, but by 8 or 8:30 sundown, the garbage pails were overflowing into the roadway. People were trying to be as neat as possible, but they couldn't. So I think somewhere on our agenda, we need to include the topic of eating and drinking in our parks.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's something that Rich, maybe we can reach out directly. That's a very good point. Like maybe some extra garbage cans, even if they're not going to be picking up stuff.
We have an agenda item about Washington Square Park on the June 3rd agenda. And
Excellent.
both parks will be there in Washington Square Park Conservancy.
Excellent. I'll be there too. Thank you, Rich.
It's not just parks though. It's going to be sanitation as a whole, because even on regular streets, there's just simply going to be more garbage disposed of in public receptacles that never was before.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will note that I think that I watched, a couple weeks ago, one of the sanitation trucks, and I'd watched a few weeks before that, going to the bins, and the bins are all empty in a lot of communities because we have no visitors. So that's a good point, Susan. If people are eating outside more where we didn't typically have that, or is there going to be a lot more garbage that's going into the corner bins? Bob, maybe that's something you can ask the sanitation garage, how their baskets have been looking in our community and whether that's an issue or just for our information, because that's actually would be helpful to know if they're seeing garbage in there. All right, so I'm going to move now over into the agenda. We had sent out the calendar Last night, you know, the email that went out, we've got a few more streets, open streets, which leads into, for Shirley, you're going to be talking about any more of the open streets. I know a lot of other people have applied, and it's sort of a...
It's just that DOT will be answering some of the questions they didn't answer last time, and just giving an update on how the program is moving along. And some of the people that now are new open streets, that'll be about 2 weeks, and they are willing to come and just tell about their initial experiences. But my general impression is that DOT is trying to loosen up about this and finding ways to help the smaller groups actually monitor and move the barriers. Now, there's something I think that in which street is it? Let's see. Oh yeah, Jones Street. So the local precinct is helping out on Jones Street, as an example.
Right.
So I assume that'll be the monitoring and helping with the barriers and that kind of thing. And I think that that kind of model will be happening much more as DOT becomes aware that these small groups just can't do it by themselves. So that'll all be in that update.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand so far, I mean, these streets haven't really, you know, with the exception of Jones Street's, really bridged into the communities so
Right.
far to see how the communities might actually use these streets. These are the hours that these are closed are sort of not really, you know, where our density of residents are. So it'd be interesting to see that transition. And
Yeah, that's something to bring up then too.
yeah, to see how they're used differently. Just a reminder, I think everybody who's registered to vote got their absentee ballot applications last week. And so if you're interested in voting, do send those back. We have the ongoing issues with the census. Obviously, I think we're going to maybe try and have them come in and do a presentation for us. Bob, did we get anywhere on that, or are we still working on that?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Do you think,
Carter, Amy
you
is trying to raise her hand, just so you know.
Amy, yeah.
Unmute.
Amy, you're muted. Hold on. You're still muted.
Yeah, she's still muted.
Amy?
Sorry.
There you go.
The meeting notes. So I finally got around to trying to gather information about what other boards are doing. I had a long conversation with Susan over at the census. They're in the community group outreach. She's in the community group outreach department, and I'm putting together my notes from the call, and then I'm going to call the guy in Gail Brewer's office, but she is going to send over to us in the next week or so a document that pulls out the census tract groups within community board to footprint. And she's going to highlight for each one what the response rate is. She's going to put in reds the census tracts that are performing the worst. And she's going to group them by, as much as she can, by neighborhood, like NoHo, Soho, Greenwich Village. And so we can then look at, we can talk about what we might want to do as a board, or if we want to have a temporary committee. But she gave me a lot of ideas about what we could do. And I'll have that written up for you end of this week or early next week.
That's great, Amy. That's actually a really good way of doing that with the census tracts, because then we can maybe reach out to some of the local groups and say, hey, here's your, you know, it's really low. Can you guys reach out to your community and different people in their own buildings? That's actually a really good idea. Thank you. Bob and Donna, you guys have your two meetings. Did you guys want to have as a separate agenda item discuss Brad's proposed bill, or do we want to just give him informal comments on that?
I already sent Brad a bunch of comments from various people when I elicited them. We certainly could do that again, and you know, that's fine with me.
I don't think it would be a bad idea to do that, just to hear what everybody says in the same conversation.
It would be good to have it as part of our formal meeting, as an agenda item.
Would you want to add that to the first or second meeting? Maybe the
probably the first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The second meeting is going to be pretty busy.
Sort of as the last topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
That way we can invite comments from the public in general if they want to, and we can elicit that and maybe put that in our notes.
Just so everybody knows, Brad Hoylman, Senator Hoylman has a bill to sort of extend, we had talked about it at our, I think at our full board meeting, to extend the provisions, I think for up to 2 years for establishments being able to deliver drinks with food and have takeout drinks with food. But if you're interested in that legislation, Bob Gormley, do you have a copy of the legislation?
I don't know. I've got to check.
I've got a link for it. I can link it in the comments.
Oh yeah, perfect. If anybody wants to take a look at it, great, thanks. Okay, and then Rich, you've got your 3 topics, so
Yep.
that should be in good shape for that.
Yep, should be easy. No, I don't think there'll be a big fight on any of them. I'm interested to see the design, and there may be some debate around around Washington Square Park. There always is some contentious debate about with the Conservancy, more often than one would expect. But I think there's some issues, and I'll ask Steve Simon to stay so that he can weigh in, and it's not just Cheryl Woodruff getting questioned.
Right, okay. Okay, and then let's see, traffic already, and did we have one potential agenda, sidewalk cafe, is that right? But they're not.
It's not a sidewalk cafe. It's a revocable consent for I'm not sure what it is. It might be a stoop or something, which came before us previously. We denied it for being a no-show, but we were at fault. We actually never notified them, so we're trying to get them back on the agenda, and it's a little bit in limbo right now.
Are we trying to have it come this month, or not trying to have it, or is that?
I asked them if they can come in July, and the agency DCA is going to reach out to them, or DOT, I forget which one, and see if they're amenable to coming in July. If they're not, if that's a burden to them, we may have to either put them on a June agenda or just take a pass and not weigh in.
If we're putting, I mean, are we expecting there to be other topics on the July agenda? Is that?
There's nothing else right now, so I would say no. Oh, in July, I have no idea, but in June, there's nothing else.
Joe, do you think it's, what do you think? Do we weigh in on this this month, and just to make sure we get heard?
Sure, if they're able to appear, that's no problem.
Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if either of you guys think that we're going to have other applications in July, and I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I don't have a sense.
No. Okay. Janine, you're still working on your.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And July will tentatively be the Duarte Square School. I know there's some people on this call who have been interested in that.
Okay. And then Chenault, you've got a couple. Never seems to stop for you. A couple of small ones.
We have one to remove a historic sign from a building that's not historic and doesn't have a sign on it. So I'm eager to see that. And another one that's a storefront. So I was mistaken. I thought our last 2 modest number of applications were going to sort of begin to ricochet, but everyone seems to be pausing. So we do tend to get 3 or 4 or 5 nearer the time as people are preparing. So I would expect more will come in.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chenault. Janet? Is Janet here? Okay, and let's see, her economic development committee's meeting on the 15th, which is the panel discussion with local business owners. And it also, hopefully we're having a meeting at some point with the same panel of landlords.
Yeah, Carter, I can actually mention something on that if you'd like. So we're re-inviting back a similar group of retailers that we actually spoke to 18 months ago. Of them, John Hardy, Barry Restaurants, he has like 4 or 5, and there's one more, it doesn't come to mind. And the idea is to figure out from them what they need in order to open. And like Carter said, I also sent the panelists from that participated in an EDSB meeting that were landlords, and small, medium, and large. And the idea is to try to group that kind of close together so that we can kind of get an overlook, not too far apart, so that we can kind of come up with a recommendation.
I've heard from quite a few business owners I talked to this weekend. It's just, there's a lot of opacity in just different people's circumstances with their landlords, and it's a big concern, but there's no pressure yet to make decisions because nobody can really be open if they're not essential places. So I think there's a lot of concern, just on a lot of unknowns, and I think it's making it difficult for people to feel confident in their decision making or even their positions or conversations. And it's nothing that we can necessarily do anything to solve their own predicaments, but what we can help maybe is with the conversation so that people realize that they're not sort of adrift on their own, particularly a lot of the smaller businesses in the board. So it's not an easy position for anybody to be in right now, obviously on either side of that, or on any side for that matter. So those are all the committee meetings. Frederica and
Sorry, Carter.
Yeah.
Social Services is going to have a meeting in June.
Okay, right. So you are having a meeting, right? Or are you
Yes,
not?
we are. We're going to have Greenwich House come, and there's 2 agenda items. One is Greenwich House has been working in collaboration with Brad Lander, actually in Brooklyn, to create an outreach program. It's taken a long time. I mean, by the time it's up to speed, like so much time has passed since COVID began, but it's going to have a lot of utility going forward. And the idea is that they're using volunteers. I'm a volunteer, and anyone who would like to be a volunteer can be a volunteer. They have lists of names of seniors throughout our district. And the idea is to call people and find out if they need anything and if they're lonesome, and you just talk to them. So that's one thing that they're going to present. It's great for COVID, but it's also really great, I think, moving forward for better understanding data in our community and better creating, more social capital. The other thing that we're going to talk about is that DFTA has been talking about, the Department for the Aging, according to Greenwich House, has been talking for a while about reconceiving the stipulations in their RFPs to allow more flexibility for what they will and won't contract for. From what we understand, the stipulations currently are very restrictive, and it prevents, in a community like ours, especially, or not especially, but it prevents Greenwich House from having the flexibility to really meet the needs of our community. That project is pretty much on hold because of COVID, but we want to have a meeting where people can start to reimagine what they would like to see in terms of programs and services for seniors. And we're going to invite someone from DFTA so that at least they can talk to us about where that process is. Is it entirely dead? At what point will they submit a concept paper that allows them to reconceive of what senior services are? So the long-winded way of saying it should be actually a really interesting meeting.
Okay, and you're working with Bob, right, on the dates?
Yes, Thursday, June 25th.
Okay.
Which is our normally scheduled time.
All right, and then Frederica, so we don't, the land use items, I mean, they're just kind of
We have 4 or 5 items that are kind of on the back burner.
Right.
The Euler clock is still stopped. I noticed that we weren't shown as not having a meeting in June. So I suppose we should just keep the door open for a little bit longer and see if anything comes along.
Okay, what are some of the 4 or 5 items that are?
Oh, I would have to check because it's been many
Right.
months.
So there's that new
but,
building that's across from Petrosina Square, right?
there was one on, you know, honestly, I'd have to send it off, but back to you, but one on Spring, one was a Cleveland. They're all really on the very back burner.
Okay. One of the things I just I asked a couple of the. So thanks, Frederica. So that's so I just want to make sure we don't get hit all of a sudden with, you know, a whole slew of them at once. So that's all.
Well, there were 4, and one of them was the Dominic Hotel that they withdrew. So
Right.
there's only probably a maximum of 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One I had reached out and texted the 2 of the attendees at our meeting, since we generally don't have them speak, just to see if I had missed anything. And I was reminded on one, somebody had pointed out that Judson Health on Spring Street near Mott has been closed, but it sort of brings up something with respect to testing. Testing is changing, and I think on June 1st, I think CityMD is starting testing a little bit more, and I think that some of the city sites, there are 5 city sites where you can get an antibody test and a coronavirus test. Bob, maybe we can find out a little bit more about that, because I think that that's something that'd be good to get out to the community. And those test numbers are also a part of the reopening statistics as well. And I had meant to follow up on that. I know that that Coral has been discussing it. And I think that I think I saw an email, I'm not sure, so don't direct quote me on this, but there's some interconnectedness of with CityMD, and I think I saw that. I know the CityMD near me in NoHo was supposed to open on June 1st or something. I think I saw that in the email. I'm not sure, but I think that we're now at a point where I know a lot of people are very interested in being tested for the antibodies, and so that's and then the free testing with the city is something, you know, that they're looking in some of the communities.
I went to CityMD and got tested. It was very easy to do. Took less than an hour, and they were very efficient.
Okay.
Carter, this reminds me of something I'm sure everybody knows. Tomorrow we have LHGV coming. So
oh, right. That's right.
To ask them lots of good questions. So everyone prepare your questions.
Yes. So we have our Ask the Experts panel tomorrow night at 6:30 that we're doing with Lennox Health Greenwich Village, which is always interesting. And now that we've sort of moved on into another phase, you know, where people are going outside, we might actually have some pretty good comments.
All right, who's first?
Somebody has a very vocal bird in the background. All right, Chenault, you had your hand up?
Oh, sorry, everything froze. I hope I'm not late. The Lenox Hill facility here has said that anyone who gets a prescription from their own doctor can come for the antibody test.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, with private health insurance, you can contact your own health insurance and they'll give you some information on where to go. I think that the CARES Act requires, and again, I'm not sure on the specifics, but I think I had read that they have waived all the copays. And so I think that that's where the CityMD sort of comes in, as far as if you have, you know, insurance that accepted there, but the city's services, I was just interested in that because they don't require any health insurance. Anybody can go get tested. But the biggest question a lot of people have had that I've heard is, you know, oh, I thought I had this in November. Well, it's okay. Well, it didn't exist in November, so you probably didn't. But, you know, you can go get the antibody test and find out if you're, you know, do have antibodies, or, you know, so I think that that's something that's good to know. And let me just see if I have anything else in my notes here. Okay, so that's all I see. Did anybody have anything else that they want to raise? Okay, I think that
Yeah, real quick, I emailed you that Kristen Jones contacted me again. I'm just going to email her. I mean, I was hoping we'd close the loop, but I'm just going to email her tomorrow and tell her to come in July and present or whatever.
Well, I think we should ask her what it is that she'd like. It's not, her request really isn't so much of a presentation. It's having an interaction with the building owner.
Right, well, I was hoping you could contact me, but I don't want to make her feel like I'm blowing her off.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah.
I'm just going to email her tomorrow, and I'll CC you and just say, what do you want? You know, you're welcome to come.
Exactly. Right, because this is a request, just so everybody knows, so I forget what it's called, but the sculpture that's in the southern part of Union Square with the time clock, which, that's on the wall of the building there, and the circles. There's a lot of different elements going on there, but the Kristen Jones and Andrew, I can't remember his last name, had designed that piece a number of years ago, and there was an anniversary that was coinciding with Earth Day. This year, they had changed some elements of the building owner had changed some elements on the public art installation. For example, many of you might remember that steam used to come out of the middle of it, and the building owner had removed that. And I think there were a couple of other issues, and they were not very pleased. And the sort of, what is the role of public art in a way that it's been placed in the community, and does a building owner have the right to change things? And they were hoping that we could help them for this to coincide with Earth Day, but of course that was derailed. But that's what Robin and I are talking about. And it's one of the only public art pieces that we have in our community board, I think. There might be a few others, but just sort of large public art installations. And so we wanted to talk with her with the building to see if there's any way we can help them sort of come to a meeting of the minds on maybe having a little bit more interaction with the artists as far as when they're making changes to their significant piece that they have there. Bob?
I was just going to add, I believe Kristen Jones is also a resident of CB2, so.
Yes. Yeah. And Andrew Ginzel is who's also a designer, and they have many public. It's a great design team. They have a lot of artistic team. They have a lot of public art throughout the city, including the subway station, the eyes of the Stuyvesant High School students, which is in the subway station. Is it Park Row? I think that might not be the right station, but they'd had some public art installations over in Jersey City, and so it's really a lot of great pieces. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, so we're not going to be having our executive committee meeting next week, but we will have it the week afterwards. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to make sure we're addressing.
Could you review June?
Chanel?
Could you review June, all the meetings through June, executive meetings?
Oh, yes, they are every, sure, let me read them out to you. Just, they're on the calendar, but they would be June 8th at 6:30, which is a Monday. June 16th, which is a Tuesday at 6:30. And then June 22nd, June 29th, which are both days at 6:30. As we sort of move into the summer, it's going to be interesting just for everybody. I'm not sure if the city is unpaused or the state is unpaused, how this is going to affect the issues that we traditionally hear. I was just speaking with somebody. I was reminded that we typically don't meet in August, right? And things generally slow down, but that could change if things are unpaused and suddenly things start moving again. And it's just something for everybody to think about, that we might need to be a little creative in July and August and how we schedule some meetings, maybe to make sure that we can maybe have one meeting over the 2 months that captures anything that might come before us, or meet both months if we need to for some of the committees. But, you know, everybody wants to get going is going to want to get going. And just because it's August is probably not going to carry much weight this year. It's just food for thought. You know, we'll see when we get there, but just something to think about. And I may cancel the executive meetings at the end of June if we don't really have too much business as well. But, you know, I always say that and then we have the meetings anyway. So we'll see when we get there. Every week's a new week. Hopefully things will be for the better as we go forward. Thanks, everybody.
Carter.
No, yeah.
Sorry. We typically meet in August and have the approval by the executive. Which who knows what's going to happen this year, but we almost always have.
Yeah, landmarks, quality of life, and SLA committees generally meet in August, but everybody else doesn't. But that's, you know, outside of those 3 committees, just food for thought. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Good night, everybody. Be well.
Night, everybody. Be well.
Night.
Yep. Bye.